Hey guys, this is the Ecron Rider here, and welcome to my third elemental countdown. Pyrokinesis, aka fire manipulation, happens to be the most elementary and basic skill any spellcaster would ever learn. Heck, fire's been around during Earth's primordial existence, and it was a marvel as soon as cavemen discovered it as a vital part of living for heat, managing food, and as a weapon. Aside from being as easy to create as my electrokinetics list, pyromancers are the most essential and versatile element for both fiction and non-fiction. Fire can be used defensively, offensively, constructively, and destructively, and is the most flexible like the oxygen we breathe. And what better time than February, since fire's symbolic to passion, the inner spirit, and is most needed in the dead of winter. And it's a good follow-up and companion with the air. So let's launch off my 10 innovative pyrokinetics in all of video games. And I hope they make you guys comfortable in the long hot ride. Flames on and flame shields up, everyone.
Earthrealm's Jinsei flows within you. Let it fuel your fire.
Let's begin this list from an unorthodox choice. Who remembers the old point-and-click adventure game Shadowgate? Well, in case you don't know, this was an ancient PC game which had made a port for the NES. This was the version me and my older sister got acquainted with, and I even made a crossover fic featuring the city of Final Fantasy as a sort of a final farewell to the Juggernaut. Though the game had some challenging and interesting puzzles and bosses, and one of them was the Fire Drake. Pyros are often associated with demons and dragons, and this malicious creature's no different. After dealing with the Hall of Mirrors, you come across a chamber with endless flames and intense heat beside a bridge, and before you process further, you encounter the Fire Drake. You panic, wondering how to beat it, and hardly anything works, and this beast is quick and deadly. You'll find yourself failing many times, and seeing the Grim Reaper, in which the game is notorious of. So, you put on the cloak to protect yourself, and if you can find some gorgeous spheres near the Shark Lake, you'd use an ice sphere that instantly freezes many things. So you cast it into the wall of fire and... that's it? Really? The Fire Drake's an interesting choice, as it always draws energy from the constant hellish environment, almost making it invincible. But whatever you do, don't reignite the tar! Loser. If you know what you're doing, the game itself can be easy, but for novices, it can be rather tricky. Nevertheless, the Fire Drake was one of the earliest and most interesting pyrokinetics I encountered. I wish Shadowgate would have been shown more often on countdown lists everywhere. Speaking of old nemeses, the flame wheel from Actraiser is definitely a pyromaniac and a dangerous adversary. As stated in my igneous levels list, Atos is a very difficult level as intense as its molten environment. This level is just packed to the brim with tricky areas as well as tons of ferocious enemies that dwell there. Tansra was not messing around here. Aside from the golden skulls and caterpillar, the flame wheel was the most volatile of them all. At the end of the second act, you encounter the culprit responsible on erupting the active chain of volcanoes at the town you just developed. The citizens warn you of a monster's footsteps triggering earthquakes and making the mountains go berserk. Why do the denizens tell you of footsteps when the monster doesn't have feet at all? Whatever. Now, unless you got the magical stardust handy, you're not going to have an easy time. The wheel chases you around the arena and charges into you relentlessly, will at times pause and release several smaller green flames, interfering and disabling your escape. It's quite the formidable foe indeed, and if you have to constantly avoid its fast and lethal charges and fireballs. You have to fight it twice, by the way. The first time at Atos, and the other in Tansra's boss rush in Deathheim. So saving up your magical powers crucial for your survival. That's nothing compared to professional mode, though, where you can't use magic at all. This was where I flat out gave up, too. The flame wheel takes the difficulty up to 11 from the Fire Drake, and is as skilled and maniacal as Kefka as a pyromaniac. Goddamn bastard! Obviously, the first ever main antagonistic pyromancer was just begging to be on this list. Bowser from the Mario series is just as essential as Mario himself as the pioneer of gaming. Pyromancy is undoubtedly his specialty, and he's always associated with it. From his own tepid skills to his own castles, about 75% of it consists of fire or instant-killing magma. He is the king of the Koopas, after all, dragon-like turtles in which they, well, breathe fire. Even his sons are capable in unleashing their fiery fury. Actually, when you encounter him for the first time in his debut game, his boss fights build up starting with fatal fireballs before you reach his bridge, and he often falls into the lava to meet his temporary demise. But as time went on, Bowser gradually became more versatile and creative. His signature move, once in Smash Bros., is his Fire Breath, appearing in nearly all games he has been featured in. It manifests in several different ways and is apparently so hot that it is just as effective underwater as it is on land. So too he has Fireballs, his main pyrokinetic ability, where he can breathe fireballs from his mouth as big as his own fist, covering a great distance and vicinity. He also bends into Fire Wave, where he expands continuous streams of fire or shoot blasts, or flurries of fireballs at his foes from his own mouth. One of his most unique abilities was his Fire Rain move. In some games, like Mario World and New Super Mario Bros. U, he can even hone his own fire blasts, both in Super Mario 64 and New Super Mario Bros. Bowser can also shoot blue fire blasts that can hone in on Mario or other enemies. It was so cool he possesses this move, and it does have a different shade, but sadly it'd eventually be extinguished and not be as constant as Greek fire. He can also shoot out his own fireballs from his cart without using a single item, when he's an opponent, causing massive damage, spin-outs, and making the racers scatter their coins, making the king gain the lead. I think he's even capable on creating his own minions made of hellfire, with courtesy of Kamek, like the Angry Sun, the Hotheads, the Fire Snakes, maybe the Blargs, or even the Bone Dinos that often breathe flames. With all those unique and versatile bends and pyro projectiles, and often living in conjunction with magma and seas of fire, I wish he wasn't always as weak and easily defeatable by Mario. Just how I stated in my villains list, I wish he was a stronger enemy as much as Shao Kahn or Andros, or other foes on this list, and taken more seriously. Nevertheless, I do admire all his various use with such a basic element. You're still one of my favorite evildoers in my book. It was tough as hell to find a Pyrotic Maverick from the X series, and I know a lot of people watching this would automatically pick Magma Dragoon for Mega Man X4. The thing is, though, I already covered his stage and parts of himself in my Igneous Levels list, and I'm also not much of a Street Fighter fan, so it looks like I would have to choose someone else. Nah, he's too weak and easy, as unique as he sounds. I wanted to choose him, but I found out he was just another bully to one of my favorite Cryokinetics, Chill Penguin, and he's just as stupidly vain as Storm Owl. That's more like it. I can honestly say that Burn Dinorex, or Matrex, is just one of the best Pyrotics conceived. And I would also say he'd give Magma Dragoon some heated competition. His level layout is a bit tumultuous, but is creative in the volcanic department. After all, he did build a secret warehouse at the heart of a Simoleon volcano. Things such as fire traps in the nerve of the base, which periodically shoots out lethal instant-killing magma, can make his lair a chore to navigate, especially in staying in the shady spots. Although it was nice to see the riders again like in Magma Dragoon's stage, and the bottommost route was the smoothest to take. If you take the upper path, you get followed by the mid-boss Tyrannoid, which is cute and cool, and then you finally reach Matrex. I wish this Maverick would have more credit instead of being overshadowed by Dragoon. His design is awesome, as if Groudon has shrunk, and he needed to wear armor and conjure flames throughout his body to compensate his downsizing. And he's based on an actual Tyrannosaurus Rex, which most Mavericks aren't inspired from dinosaurs. Not even an Ankylosaurus, sadly. He uses the warehouse to hide away his weapons, in which he crafted from magma. He definitely has great use of his abilities. And while he has a shorter range from Dragoons, his attacks are still decent, even though they're mostly traps throughout the level. He has a ground fire move which burns for a while and splits to either 1 or 2 balls covering a good range. He also charges a lot, but his burn tackle is twice as lethal, erupting a wall of flame before tackling and leaving a plume of flame behind. And he has the usual fireballs he shoots out across the arena in various directions. Your best bet is to take on Wing Spiral first, with wind being his weakness. Still, he is a skilled and amazing prehistoric maverick, and his lair requires as much strategy as his own battle. With those factors, I wish he'd be talked about more often over Magma Dragoon. If anything, he can just be as exquisite, and he seems to be an underrated maverick in the X series, and a pyromaniac. Vulcain was a bona fide classic. That bot was just an epic boss fight in Pyrokinetic in all of the Star Fox series and in 64. After you accomplish the mission in Katina, you investigate the Red Dwarf at Solar, in other words, Lilat's very own son.
That area's an oven. Don't go burning that R-Wing. Be reasonable, Fox.
I'll be careful.
The store is without doubt dangerous, as you need to stay away from the molten heat as far to the top as possible, and rely on refills from enemies and rocks. Andros unleashed his experimental bioweapon, and I think he's actually better than the spy bot in Sector X. First off is his entrance when he conjures a large wave, and with him bursting from it. Second, he utilizes and adapts to the sun's own surface as attacks onto the advanced R-Wing, with splashes, waves, plasma sights, and some fancy spins. It can also alter its molecular makeup and those surrounding it to adapt and absorb its own volcanic environment. It's not as much of a threat as the aforementioned Flame Wheel, nor as strong, but nevertheless, he's just badass. And there has never been any other boss taking place in Solar since, nor as eye-catching. It's unbelievable and foolhardy how Andros created an experimental weapon to function in the sun's magmatic surface, reaching from 9,000 to 15,000 degrees, in which not even Pepper's R-Wings can barely tolerate.
The R-Wing might not make it.
This baby can take temperatures up to 9,000 degrees.
What, 9,000?
I think Vulcain is just a trailblazer on such an uninhabitable terrain. It's unique and heart-racing. It's not quite as easy since the environment can still hinder you. I just feel it and Solar should be appreciated more in all the Star Fox fandom.
Yippee! You did it!
While most contenders on this list and the majority of pyromancers are designed for death and destruction, this one in particular kind of does the exact opposite. It's one of those rare cases in which Pyrotics can form and shape their very own realms, aside from Fire God Liu Kang, creating his own universe. enter the other golden goddess, Din. Din is one of the golden goddesses next to Furore and Nehru, creating the world and Hyrule itself, while also leaving behind the Triforce in the Sacred Realm. Din's fiery arms had forged the red lands and deserts of Hyrule, including the arid plains such as Gerudo Valley and the Lanero Desert, the many treacherous mountain chains, and its active volcanoes from Death Mountain to Elden Volcano. Din is of course associated with not just power, but also related to fire and the earth, thus always having her red essence, and is Furore's polar opposite. Because of her outrageous fiery essence, Gorons worship her, though with the Gerudo it's still uncertain. They always admire her ferocious spirit, being the bringer of flames, and her outstanding and competitive inner strength. Demise was just the never-ending incarnate of her possessing the Triforce of Power, which would be passed down to Ganondorf, Ganon, and Calamity Ganon. Din is both constructive and destructive, the most threatening of all the golden goddesses, and perhaps the strongest. Possessing endless consuming power, she also gifted Link with her own flames, making a large though temporary burning inferno capable of damaging surrounding enemies in its wake. Hell, it's a vital force to use against the nefarious Dark Link in the Water Temple, or even unlocking secrets such as blazing torches to the Shadow Temple. Just like Furore, I only care for her goddess incarnate rather than her basic human counterpart, and while I just prefer Furore over her, she still is essential. No Pyro list would ever be completed without mentioning Fire Kirby. A lot of people never consider transformations, which is Kirby's standpoint, but since they're as vital as food and water, they should not be excluded. Fire Kirby is one of the very first variations introduced, and just like Tornado and Ice, it debuted in Kirby's Adventure. But unlike the Tornado, Kirby's streams of flame are not temporary. As long as the player holds it down, it always remains active. Kirby Superstar and Superstar Ultra bended the elemental further, as Kirby can exhale in multiple directions at once, even change its trajectory and its range. He does have Dash Attack, in which he engulfs in flames, which becomes a staple as one of his basic moves in Smash Brothers. He can spin in mid-air in flames, producing an elemental shield, even on the ground rolling around and also be impenetrable. I'm so glad my most played installments got the best pyro abilities. Lest we forget Crystal Shards, in which Kirby can combine fire with stones, needles, bombs, electricity, cutters, and just like Bowser, he could use both opposing elements of fire and ice combined. And future titles either copy-paste Kirby's Flame Breath, his target flames, engulfing himself and using invincibility, changing his trajectory and speed, and being a raging inferno while charging. The Forgotten Land enhances to its Dragon Flames as a more powerful and purple upgrade, even leaving behind flame traps much like Dinorex, even transforming into a dragon with wings. Bowser and Link can never do those things. Just another reason why Kirby is more superior is to the Hylian with his weapons. Fire Kirby's abilities are just leagues above the King Koopa's and the hero's skills in that regard. And they always look stunning with their spiky, blazing headdress, which is a certain clothing I always commend. Fire Kirby is one of several versatile pyrokinetics I had ever encountered, and a vast improvement over Ice and Tornado. And yet, there are still 3 others that just burn brighter. Of course, the Fire Elemental summon from Final Fantasy was just begging to be on this list. And he's just a lot more promising than with Rubicante and Merilith combined. The beastly Ifirit was just too iconic to be missed, and he can rival his ice polar opposite Shiva on being available in nearly every installment of the whole Juggernaut. Since his debut in Final Fantasy III, along with his other fellow Eidolons, he has been the most archetypal, mightiest, and popular of the whole gang. Whether it be Hellfire, the Flames of Hell, or a simple Inferno, or being an active, aggressive party member, Ifirit is certainly the tepid ticket. Ifirit makes his epic debut in the 3rd main game, and depending on the job class, before there was even the Phoenix, he too can heal its users with Healing Light, rather than just use Hellfire and Inferno to incinerate its enemies. In my favorite installment, Final Fantasy IV, the summoner Rydia attains him by default as you get to use her again as an adult. He became one of many inhabitants of the Feymark, and it's my all-time favorable version of him. He can also be summoned in the interlude as the Maenad defeats a Hellhound. But watch out in the after years as he's a fatal enemy to Edge and Rydia, before you're able to knock some sense into him by the Maenad's thrall. Maybe even be a Blanca lookalike. He's an incredible Esper in 6, after the erratic Eidolon's defeat, and through its Magicite, he can teach users fire-based spells along with drain and increase their strength. In 10, he puts the kill from Kilika, as Yuna uses his Meteor Storm and his fire skills that causes massive damage, even penetrating through Protect. And his Overdrive Hellfire, which rains both pyro and geo damage to multiple targets. And if Waka has the World Champion weapon, he can break the limit of 9,999. He too can absorb fire spells and teach basic Fire, No Blaze, and No Frost. And finally Dissidia, where Ifirit is summoned to multiply the user's Braviary, and even Bartz and Yuna can unleash his Hellfire in active battle for a splitting second. With all those capabilities, Rubicante can't possibly hold a candle to him. He's just as versatile and twice as offensive as Kirby, in bending and unleashing his primitive rage. Through its evolution, Ifirit becomes less demon-like and more beastly, like Reptile's de-evolution in Mortal Kombat, and seems to be the most basic Aeon, only consuming 26 to 30 to 34 magic points in every summon. And his rival's one of my favorite Cryomancers, the Ice Queen Shiva. Final verdict, this powerful Jin is one of the most famous and admired of all Aeons in Pyrotics. No list can possibly be the same, nor is Hot Take without him.
If you don't like it, I believe you can go to hell. Because you aren't going anywhere else.
Can't say it better myself. When it comes to an entry from the Pokémon series, I don't consider the humans much. Let's face it, with every installment we always look forward to whatever pocket monsters each generation offers. And I don't necessarily highlight any of the trainers nor gym leaders corresponding to a certain element, as they train their Pokémon rather than conjure the said elemental themselves. It's all about the Pokémon that matters here, and frankly, they'd be weak and ordinary without them. That's the title of the series, after all. So out of the entire colossal group of fire types, which one stood out to me the most like an eruption? Well, for that, let's look no further than the second generation. The basic and secondary starters of Johto, the Cyndaquil line, had all made it in the second entry. I'm a Gen 2er through and through, and Pokemon went into full orbit since the second generation, and the trio of fire starters just made it all worthwhile. First up is the cutesy Cyndaquil. That timid baby has traits similar to a platypus, porcupine, an echidna, and as a mouse, apparently. I always loved petites being small and mighty, and Cyndaquil should never be underestimated. As while it's often hunched or quilled over, it tends to leave its fiery quills exposed, and launches its flames and smokescreen from its back, like a fiery geyser when threatened. If advanced, it can build up and exhale decimating blasts like a dragon, yet use its high speed and special attack in intense battles. Like most fire types, it relies on those stats, and has a decent stat total of 309. It's very much like me, actually. Shy and vertically challenged, but easily defensive when provoked. Why it always shows its eyes closed and not wide open like his evolved brethren, I'll never know. At level 14, contrary to level 16 with Charmeleon, we get the kick-ass Quilava. As far as I know, even though I don't follow Josh Scorcher anymore, Quilava's considered as one of his all-time favorite Pokemon. I agree in terms of design, he's more balanced, and may have more W's than its final form, but he's always a step in between. Better than Charmeleon any day. It's not as skitty, and the wary weasel still uses its blazing quills before attacking directly. It has more sporadic flaming plumes on its back. It's a lot sleeker, speedy, and offensive. It tends to outmaneuver their opponents before diving into fights. And just like Kirby and Matrix, they charge while engulfed in flames and leave fiery or burnt earth behind. Also, just like Vulcain, the volcano Pokemon is heat-proof and tends to absorb pyro moves. Flame Charge and the impenetrable constant Flame Wheel are its strongest moves, even introducing these abilities into the series, including Eruption. And Ash owned one up to that evolution during his Johto journeys. And finally we come to the tyrannical, abominable volcano Pokemon that rivals Entei, Typhlosion. It's completely the fiery opposite of baby Cyndaquil with a ferocious, domineering, and territorial nature. With its skill Eruption, it can instantly engulf and decimate its surroundings and enemies on contact. Despite its actual aggression, it doesn't let its temper get to its head like Charizard, and it can still be very loyal to its trainers, and won't hesitate to valiantly defend those it cherishes till it falls. Kind of like another one of my favorite Pokemon, Braviary. Up until Gen 8, Typhlosion and the Cyndaquil line stayed as mono fire types, and the Scorbunny line uses to maintain that record.
Which may not be the best thing in the world, but at least Typhlosion can survive 2 fucking hits from Stealth Rock. I'm looking at you, all-powerful Charizard.
And even my all-time favorite YouTuber, Favels Minion, will agree that Cyndaquil and Typhlosion are some of his nostalgic and favorable Pokemon ever. While it shares Charizard's stats, it's just better. In its Sinnohian form with Fire and Ghost, it meant to purify and calm spirits as they escort them to the afterlife. It's peaceful and tranquil, opposing their basic counterparts, and greatly respects the deceased. Cyndaquil's not only the fire-starter Pokemon of Johto, but in the ancient Sinnoh region featured in Pokemon Legends Arceus. And if you complete the Hoenn Pokédex in Emerald, you're actually gifted with one. What a nice little extra reward. Also, even my trainer OCs, Zelda II and Akari, each owned a Cyndaquil, and the former had hers evolve into a Quilava and soon a Typhlosion. Cyndaquil alone was chosen as part of the Special Forces in my Cowboy Bebop and Mega Man X crossover, Recessional of the Red Dragons. In fact, Cyndaquil was the first Johto starter I got attracted to, and I even wanted to nickname it Scorcher Sonic because of its unique concept, design, it often curls into a ball, and the fact that speed and special attack are its greatest feats. While I usually prefer Chikorita on account she's green, the Cyndaquil line qualifies as my second favorite evolutionary starter line, and they're just as mighty and passionate as all Pyromancers. Alright, we blazed through 9 trailblazers on this list, but before we get to the most tepid hellspawn of them all, let's have the honorable and dishonorable mentions light up. I had saved the most dominant for last, the most powerful and perhaps the most scariest of all Pyromancers and Pyromaniacs. Some like Din or Fire God Liu Kang are capable on forming worlds utilizing the basic element of fire. But there are often those who destroy not just entire realms, but all of existence. There can only be one who could surpass the basic and masterful fire starters, and benders. And it just screams Armageddon!
Has begun.
It's fucking Blaze.
Blaze from Mortal Kombat has been unrivaled. Up until Armageddon, he's always been shrouded in mystery until he has been unveiled as the most powerful abomination of the entire series. I don't necessarily consider that torch theories described on the Pit Bridge in Mortal Kombat 2, but his true origins all started in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. He was a playable character there for the first time, utilizing all forms of fire, including heat and even lethal lava, but his true bio wasn't until Mortal Kombat Deception. He was imprisoned in the lava shrine of Outworld by Onaga's holy men, as being trapped in the lava pool charged with defending the last dragon egg. He remained there for many centuries, and even lost mental contact with the red dragon Cairo, prompting him to awaken Dagon far earlier than needed for Armageddon, until the egg hatched and the last dragon took possession over Reptile's Uroboros, and was the reincarnation of the Dragon King that Blaze was set free. His objective? To unleash hell across the realms and orchestrate Armageddon. Edenian sorceresses and Empress of Flames, Dahlia's finest creation. From her visions of the end of days, Blaze came to be, and his function was to either strip the combatants' powers, making them twice as powerful, or simply just by killing them all, as the god Argus intended. Needless to say, Blaze was a very scary sight, and the embodiment of the end. I'd say next to Shao Kahn, he's the most strongest combatant in the entire Juggernaut. The top of the food chain, if you will. He wields nearly everything any Pyrotic can do, and he's like every Pyromaniac's wet dream. He's mighty, he's highly destructive, he's horrifying, and is proven to be a force never to be reckoned with. He's not only the final boss in Armageddon, but also in every single Mortal Kombat Mugen game, including the chaotic new era. He could even rival Shao Kahn and even Chronica in that regard. Sure, he can be defeated, if you happen to be skilled enough, but the results are just as dire.
The quest did nothing to resolve the instability of the realms.
I hated the idea insisted in the reboot.
Reboot!
Reboot!
I hated the idea insisted in MK9 that Shao Kahn decimated him and Taven in absorbing Blaze's flames upon the demon's defeat.
He must win.
His sacred and volatile flames grant the user anything he or she desires, like wearing the Time Crown, and Raiden was desperate on preventing Armageddon from reoccurring, even being at the mercy of Khan and restoring history, thus the lousy NRS timelines. In my series finale Final Combat, Blaze was proven as a real threat, as not only he destroyed all reality like a ginormous volcano, but to actually erase things.
There are fates worse than death.
His head's gone. It's like it's been erased.
Erased from existence.
With his immense power, I could see him as disintegrating people and things completely, counting the soul and all. And Blaze was so hell-bent on destruction that he'd rather wipe out everything and everyone, consumed with rage like Majora and the moon crashing. His destiny is as megalomaniacal as Kefka and his pyromancy, and since then, Blaze has been showcased as the embodiment of the end to all things. I pray for Fire God Vulcain to kick his ass and save all, just as I did. I'm the Ecron Rider, and Blaze will always be the topmost pyrokinetic and pyromaniac in all of gaming. Shao Kahn may be lucky slaying him, but you can't deny that Blaze is the true incarnate of a non-existence by utilizing its insatiable incineration. Lastly, I just want to state a personal truth. As terrifying and as powerful Blaze is, he was supposed to be the final obstacle, the final enemy of the Mortal Kombat series. He was in the game as open-ended, and he was the last goal for me. Once I conquered Blaze in my chronology series, I saved the realms, but not without some sacrifices. I've received a sense of closure as I saw the end of Armageddon and when I'd written Final Combat. Blaze was like the icing on the cake, which was the Pyramid of Argus, with Fire God Vulcain as the cherry. It had taken almost 3 decades, but Blaze just brought me the finality I needed. And I hope for the series, it may do the same.